Good evening. I'm Chris Matthews in Washington. We've got some big guests tonight on Hardball. Elizabeth Warren and Barney Frank will both be joining us later. The campaign to protect Roy Moore and discredit the free press hit a low road this week, with the Washington Post reporting that a woman approached the Post trying to peddle a fake story about Roy Moore. According to the Post, in a series of interviews over 2 weeks, the woman shared a dramatic story about an alleged sexual relationship with Moore in 1992 that led to an abortion when she was 15 years old. And during the interview, she repeatedly pressed Post reporters to give their opinions on the effects that her claims could have on Moore's candidacy if she went public. Well, the Post never reported the unsubstantiated story. Instead, they researched a woman trying to push the story. They found a website by someone with the same name, Jamie Phillips, trying to raise money to fund her move to New York to, quote, work in the conservative media movement to combat the lies and deceit of the liberal mainstream media, close quote. Well, according to the Washington Post, reporters followed her from her home and saw her walking into the New York offices of Project Veritas. That's the group that sets up video sting operations to discredit news organizations and other liberal groups, such as Acorn. Well, the Trump Foundation donated $10,000 to the group in 2015. And last Wednesday, Phillips met with a Post reporter, Stephanie McCrumman, at a restaurant in Alexandria, Virginia. Quote, Phillips had arrived early and was waiting for McCrumman, her purse resting on the table. When McCrumman put her purse next to or near Phillips' purse to block a possible camera shot, Phillips moved hers. Well, McCrumman confronted her about her story. Let's watch.
So do you still have an interest in, as this says, combating the lies and deceit of the liberal MSM? Do you still have an interest in working in the conservative media movement to combat the lies and deceit of the liberal MSM? Is that still your interest?
No, not really.
Yeah.
Not at this point.
Mumble, mumble. Anyway, the Post also confronted Project Veritas founder James O'Keefe. You remember him, who declined to say whether Phillips worked for his group. Let's watch that.
Does Jamie Phillips work for Project Veritas? Did you guys send her to speak to pose as a victim of Roy Moore to the Washington Post?
I'm 15 minutes late to this meeting, so okay. I gotta run. But we will get in touch with you, okay?
Jamie Phillips, does she work for the Washington Post? Does she work for Project Veritas?
I'm not getting into the questions, right?
Well, he was caught, wasn't he? Anyway, O'Keefe told the Post reporter to come back later. Of course, he was waiting with a confrontation of his own. Here he goes, O'Keefe.
Does Jamie Phillips work for Project Veritas?
So I'm gonna ask.
Does Jamie Phillips work for Project Veritas? Are you gonna answer that question?
I'm gonna have a few things to say here.
Okay. Second question.
Yeah.
Are you working with Roy Moore?
Okay.
Are you working with Steve Bannon?
I'm gonna ask.
Are you working with the Republican Party?
No.
Are you working with the Republican Party of Alabama?
I'm joined right now by USA Today's Washington Bureau Chief Susan Page, national political reporter for Axios Jonathan Swan, and Jason Johnson, political editor at The Root. I want to start with Susan. And one thing that I love about this story, besides people getting caught with their sneaky business of trying to put a punk job on the Washington Post by trying to sell them a salacious story they could then point out a day later was a complete joke, a punking operation, it shows that real newspapers with real editors, and to be honest with you, grown-ups aboard have been around a few times on the ride here, who spot and smell deceit. They saw this as a setup.
You know the musical Schoolhouse Rock that has How a Bill Becomes Law? This is like how a story gets into print with real journalism. This was people acting just like you want journalists to act. They should show this in journalism schools, because you listen to an unsolicited comment from somebody, they're offering you information over the transom, you don't take it at face value, you check it out, and you confront them if you find out that it's false and phony. And so good for them.
I can see the story running. If the Post had fallen for this trap, they would have run a big splash. 15-year-old claims that she had abortion after being impregnated by Roy Moore, and then the next day, this group comes out, the Breitbart sort of organization we have here, Veritas, which is a bad name for them because it means truth in Latin, comes out and says, it's all a joke. We fooled them. That proves that all the women that went out against Roy Moore are all dishonest. All the media coverage has been dishonest. We got you. Roy Moore wins big. He may still win.
Right. Well, it's not just Veritas doing this. I mean, Steve Bannon sent two of his top reporters for Breitbart News to Alabama, Matt Boyle and Aaron Klein, with an express mission to discredit the female accusers. This is a strategy of a lot of these groups on the outside.
What was their plan? How would they describe the usual?
Well, no, they've been
ruin their reputations?
No, to try and prove that they were lying. And look, they've failed to do that, but there have been a number of stories about these women which have raised doubts about their stories and the women and their character, and, with varying levels of sourcing. But this has been a campaign. This is the latest in the series of stories that have been
Jason, it tells me that they can't win on defense anymore.
No.
They can't deny the charges, so they're going on wicked, nasty, dirty offense. If we can destroy the Washington Post, then all the people down there in Alabama will say, just shows.
Right.
You can't trust those northern reporters. They're out to get us.
Well, see, that's the thing, Chris. There were two parts of this video that really struck me, and I taught my students about this. I was like, look, this is real reporting. Everyone in my department was teaching this today. It wasn't just the matter of how degrading and despicable it is to have a woman pretend to be the victim of abuse and rape, as if that's supposed to diminish actual
And she had an abortion because of it.
Right, and she had
throw it all in.
Exactly, throwing
all
the whole
lies.
thing in there. But the second thing is how many times she tried to get the reporters to say that this would harm Roy Moore, because they would have run with that too. Even if they had just gotten them on tape saying, yes, this will really damage them, Project Veritas would have gotten what they wanted, because they just want to prove bias, even if they can't prove that the
So
reporter.
they put a pocketbook, a purse, if you will, on the table, and apparently every time the legitimate Washington Post reporter would walk in for the meeting, the two of the meetings, there just happened to be a big purse sitting on the table, and she puts her purse. This is like Black Spy, White Spy, the old, with Mad comic book, Mad magazine, and she put her purse in front of it, and then the dubious one, the bogus one, the punkster or whatever, she moves her pocketbook, her purse, so it gets a better shot directly at him. So tell me about this. Is this going to be? Jason said this is going to be already in the journalism classes.
Yeah. Because of course this is exactly what journalists are supposed to do, and I think it's great that people who like the news media and those who are suspicious of it see how this works, because this is what journalists do every day all around town.
Much less experience with you in print, but what I really liked, if I did a takeout piece on Sunday or something I was investigating, that I got my editors, and even the top editor, Phil Brunsby, said, who was your source on that? Tell me about that person. Can you get another one? Can you get Lenzner? Can you get Terry Lenzner? Can you get him? Can you get this other person? Constantly pushing you for deadline to have the best sourcing you can. Anyway, last night in his first campaign appearance in 10 days, Roy Moore said the allegations to him were, I love this, completely false and malicious. Let's watch.
Why are they doing this? Well, I'm going to tell you why they're doing this. They're trying to hide the true issues which face the people of this country and this state that they want resolved. It's no different than when the Washington Post brought out the Russian investigation at a time when President Trump is trying to get his agenda passed. Everybody knows I have not run one negative ad. But I'm going to take off some gloves and show the truth in this campaign.
Well, somebody's put some gas in this guy's tank. He looks like he might win now.
Well, I always thought he was going to win, Chris.
Really?
I always thought, because at the core issue here, you have a lot of conservative Republican voters who view the Democratic Party as inherently immoral. And if you've got groups of people, and this is not a criticism, it's just a fact, if you've got groups of people who think that two adult men, consenting men having sex is a greater sin, that is a greater sin to them than what they think Roy Moore might have possibly done. I always thought he was going to win this election, regardless of the circumstance. And if it ever looks like he's not winning, it's just undecided voters, and those are really Roy Moore voters who just don't want to admit it yet.
So these are values questions that surmount any act of personal villainy at all.
Exactly.
I don't think we know that yet. I mean, Roy Moore may well win. Roy Moore ought to win. I mean, given that it's a state that.
What do you make of this third-party guy? This third guy coming in, Lee Busby, has showed up. He's a conservative. Yeah. It's the third person, jumped in the race in Alabama as a write-in candidate. Lee Busby's his name. He's a retired Marine colonel who says he usually votes Republican. Let's watch how that affects life. Let's take a listen to him.
Were you a supporter of Roy Moore before the allegations of child molestation? What changed your mind that you couldn't vote for Roy Moore?
It was not the the swirl going on. It was not that at all. I got no interest in it. I hope they get it sorted out, but it's not my interest. I don't know Roy Moore. I've never met him. But there's a sense of self-righteousness that comes out of that campaign that bothered me, and I don't think it represents the majority of Alabama voters.
Jason, he looks attractive. I hate to make judgments, but he seems like raw material there for a candidate. I don't know.
I mean,
he's got the right accent. He seems rough and ready. I don't know what to make of him.
Yeah, it's this sort of like Wes Clark of Alabama. You know, I'm the military guy. I'm tough, I'm macho. I think at the end of the day, though, I don't think this ends up making that much of a difference, right? If you're someone who's offended by Roy Moore and a Republican's like, I cannot vote for this guy, okay, then maybe you write for the write-in candidate. But there are enough people in that state who are like, look, they're taking the Donald Trump argument. We need those votes in the Senate. And I don't think that a third-party
that's a simple question, all three. Who wins because of this third guy entering the race? He's pro-life, like Roy Moore. So if you're pro-life and you can't vote for, he's probably against gay rights too, whatever, gay marriage, equality. So maybe he's a safe way to vote against Roy Moore without voting for the enemy.
It is, but I still think people vote for Roy Moore. I still think he wins.
It's got to help the Democrat, to the extent that it helps anyone.
Yeah, I think it helps the Democrat, but it's irrelevant to the outcome, I'd guess.
I agree.
How can it be irrelevant if you still think Moore might lose?
I just think we don't know. I think you can't trust the polling in a situation like this.
Why can't you trust
because turnout's going to be really low. So
also
if a pollster calls you, do you want to say...
that, before we went on, Jason, you made a very important point. I want you to repeat it about when people said they hadn't made up their mind, they had made up their mind. They didn't want to tell the pollster. They were for Moore.
Exactly. That's like basic polling 101 in political science, especially since we saw those numbers occur during the worst week of these allegations. And suddenly you have 8% saying undecided. They're not undecided. Look, I think that Busby may end up making a difference if this is going to be a close race, but I think it's going to be a 5 or 6 point win.
I mean, Chris, hi, Mr. Pollster, do you want to vote for the accused pedophile? I mean, this is like if we're going to test the sort of gap between what you say to the surveyor and the reality.
I want to know if those pollsters had a local
test.
accent or not, too. I'd like to know that, that little fact feature. Anyway, Susan Page, you're holding your powder dry. Jonathan, Swan, and Jason, I think you know where you're going on this one. Coming up, the Russian investigation. We're going to connect the dots on all the evidence of collusion we know right now.